If you run a company or manage a team, hiring qualified people quickly can make or break your business. Imagine a position of need going unfilled for weeks or even months because you just can't seem to find the right candidate. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people you want faster. This makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts. You only pay for results on your job post. Just in the last minute that I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. Now that is fast. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. Listeners will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Go to Indeed.com/BWN right now to support this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply.
I think, did I call him Will Smith? For some reason, Will Smith was in my head.
Yikes.
Will Howard, Will Smith, doesn't matter. He's got the will to win. He's a national championship, baby.
It's the arrival. I came in the league, went straight for the title.
Intercepted at the goal line. Jack Sawyer.
You know, some people gotta learn how to lose, man.
The Michigan Wolverines shocked the college football world.
And after all that, it's Ohio State together at the mountaintop.
There's nothing quite like the game.
Michigan versus Ohio State.
This is The Rivalry, proud to be part of the Varsity Network from Learfield and sponsored by Elevated Integrity Construction.
Welcome to the Rivalry Podcast. It's Jace and JP, Michigan, Ohio State, garbage-free college football podcast, all about the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry from River Radio Ministries, presented by Elevated Integrity Construction. We've got a double spring game issues in the month of April. So we've got one today. We're recording this on Monday after the Ohio State spring game. We'll have another one next Monday after some coverage up in Ann Arbor for the Michigan spring game. Be sure to connect wherever you are listening to the podcast right now. Be sure to download and subscribe, and across social media at Rival Pod, Instagram, Twitter, and rivalpod.com. Mr. JP, we have got a ton of stuff we want to go through from the Ohio State spring game. From this past weekend. One of the big things, and we'll just jump right into it. One of the big things, I'm going to rely on you as the Ohio State guy.
That's fine.
Here. One of the big things going into this was the talk about the Ohio State quarterback battle, because there had been some rumors, some rumblings. Obviously, Julian Sayin and Lincoln Kienholz being the two primary quarterbacks. Tavian St. Clair looks like he's playing kind of a third string down the depth chart role. What do you make of that whole quarterback room right now? And what did you make of them coming into the spring game?
Yeah, I feel like this has been a conversation that's been super relevant just the past couple of seasons outside of last year. I mean, I think everybody knew Will Howard was QB1, except for Ryan Day at the beginning. I think
That's
tried
what
to
I was
make it
gonna
a weird.
say.
He tried to make it like a really weird battle between Devin Brown. It never was.
No.
Nobody in their mind thought that ever.
You know, and what's weird about that situation too is that when it actually got into game playing, you started to see, like, you know, you get up on Western Michigan or whatever. The second guy to come in was Devin Brown and not Julian Sayin, which was a little bit weird there too. So does that have any role to play moving forward about how strongly he thinks about Sayin?
No, I don't take it that way. I think it was a nod to Devin Brown. He'd been around the program. He'd worked hard. Yeah, he's the experienced guy. And I'll be curious genuinely to see what Devin Brown does at California. That's where he transferred to literally like the night of the championship. I think he announced where he was going. And so I don't really take it as like Sayin was that far under, because if you've ever listened to a second of this podcast, you know my thoughts on Devin Brown. They are clear as Ryan Day. So I don't take it like that. I think for me, going into this, in my mind mentally, Sayin was QB1, and all throughout practice, you'd heard Ryan Day saying that him and Kienholz were kind of neck and neck. Ryan Day has said that like every single year since CJ Stroud. Yeah. everybody that saw the game on Saturday, I think it was a clear, definitive answer on who QB1 is right now, and it's Julian Sayin. I mean, there are concerns that even as I was watching,
that doesn't mean that you're necessarily walking and tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth here. It doesn't mean you're necessarily watching the spring game and walking away going, wow. It just means that he seems like the guy who has the most control. And in my mind, I walked away saying he probably has a similar floor, but a higher ceiling to Lincoln right now.
I would trust that. I don't think I've ever watched a spring game and been like, holy cow, that guy is just, that's just not, you're just not. It's
a public practice.
Yeah, you're not ever going to walk away. And even if CJ Stroud was still here, you're not going to be walking away being like, oh man. But I did kind of walk away impressed with Sayin a little bit, because the first 3 drives he goes out there were 3 touchdown drives. Now, granted, he only threw for 1 touchdown to Mylan Graham, but he looked like he was in command of the offense.
Yeah.
He made some really nice throws. The placement was there. The one thing that really makes me cautious is, I guess the word I'll use right now, is just his size. I thought even last year when I would be on the sideline.
What is his size? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. What's his size?
He's like 6'1" is what they have listed, which realistically means he's like 5'11" or 6 foot.
right.
And so
he's we can't put cleats on.
Yeah,
bigger
he's
cleats.
Yeah. With 2-inch heels, the man is 6'2". Like he's maybe 6 foot on a good day on his tippy toes. Like, he's not a big quarterback, whereas Keen Holtz, I believe, is like 6'4", or Tavian St. Clair's like 6'4". One of them's bigger guys.
Typical quarterback build, yeah.
I mean, last year even, I think this year they had him listed in the low 200s. Last year being on the sideline, I mean, he looked like a high school kid.
Because he essentially was.
You know? I mean, yeah, the dude's 19, 20 years old. He did put on some muscle. The thing with me and Julian Sayin is the size. I mean, you saw it happen in the spring game. He's a smaller quarterback. There was one play in particular, I want to say it was even on his second drive, where the ball got swatted by a defensive lineman. That might be a more normal occurrence. That's something I don't really love to see, because then a tipped ball means an easy interceptable ball.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I don't necessarily love that, but I did like a lot of the throws. Keen Holtz on his very first drive went 3 and out, had some really bad looking throws. St. Clair, I kind of in my mind already knew that he wouldn't really be seeing any of the field, but I just wanted to see the raw potential of him.
For sure.
And I felt like he accomplished that. He started a little rough, made some really, really bad throws, but really kind of redeemed himself, got comfortable. I think some of that was just nerves. First time playing at Ohio Stadium in front of the crowd. Being a freshman, have all these expectations. First half was rough. Had some really bad throws. Second half, he redeemed them. I mean, he finished 11-18, 123 yards. He had a nice touchdown throw at the end of the game. All around, they were fine. Like, it wasn't going to be a performance where I walked away being like, oh, man, I'm so ready to go.
And if you are, like, maybe take it down a notch.
Yeah.
Like,
Julian Sayin is good enough. He showed me that he has the skill set to lead the Buckeyes to the playoffs.
We're admittedly coming into this and hear us say, like, even as we're breaking all this down, the reason we're doing it is because it's football and we enjoy football. No one in their right mind, at least no one in this podcast, is sitting here going to look at a spring game unless there is just something glaring and go, man, we're going to analyze this to death, and this has direct implications for the fall. There are some things that you can go, okay, this is a concern, or okay, I'm curious about this. Hey, size is a concern because that's not going to change between now and August, right?
And when you have to go up against Texas week 1,
but we're not.
I mean,
no one's going to look at this necessarily and go, well, if he went 9 for 18, and that's going to be it's like it's a practice that you all. We're talking about practice, man.
Well, and here's the thing when it comes to the quarterback battle that is going to be honestly maybe the main reason that people hate Ohio State fans.
Probably there's many. This could go in many different directions.
I'm willing to admit this here. When I look at the quarterbacks that Ohio State has had since I've been a fan that could comprehend the game of football, so starting back like 2000, I can't remember a time where they've really had a quarterback that has been just atrocious. Even when we've had the Todd Beckmans, the Justin Zwicks, the guys like that, the talent around them has still been good enough. They went to the Natty with Todd Beckman. Yeah. And so I'm looking at this and I'm going, okay, well, we had the same conversation when a guy named Kyle McCord came in.
Yeah.
And Kyle McCord, while he didn't have the leadership skill, talent-wise, he had the skill set.
The knock on McCord from this podcast in particular, from both of us, and was always that he is not this phenomenal, fantastic quarterback of the CJ Stroud, Justin Fields college variety. The knock was not, well, he is just absolute trash.
No, to me, it was always the mental side of things.
Yeah.
He didn't have, and you saw it, and I think we even said it.
He was a good quarterback. He was never a great quarterback. That was the question. The question wasn't, is he absolutely terrible?
Yeah,
that was never the question.
And we had that discussion even last year before the season played out between him and Will Howard, where I thought skill-wise, they're probably pretty comparable. But Will Howard to me, I think, did I call him Will Smith? For some reason, Will Smith was in my head. Yikes. Will Howard, Will Smith, doesn't matter. He's got the will to win. He's a national championship, baby.
I hate this podcast.
Buckeyes in 5 or whatever the heck it is. Will Howard had the mental toughness. You saw the leadership. And that's just something that I didn't see out of Kyle McCord. But even then, Kyle McCord was still a good, despite what you want to say, looking back on it, lost to Michigan, whatever, that is never obviously a thing you want to do. Yeah. But that was still a successful season overall. You had a good record. He still performed well. They've not really had those years where a quarterback has just been so downright bad that they've not been able to be competitive in the Big Ten.
And that's what one of the things that I wrote down, and I suppose, with the way the season ended, you could even question what competitive in the Big Ten means. But I wrote down, you're not staring down what Michigan had last year.
No.
And by the way, especially with the way that season finished, that's not even necessarily a knock on Davis Warren, but let's also be honest about what Michigan had and did not have last year. Mm-hmm. And while Davis had success in getting the win over Ohio State and Alabama, he was not a major role in those things. He did and we talked about this on the pod. He did what he needed to do. And most of it was defense and ground game for Michigan, right? Mm-hmm. And we won't rehash all that. In the Alabama game especially, it was incredible defense forcing turnovers, yada, yada. The point is that you guys are not staring down a situation where you are, in any scenario that I can reasonably imagine, where you've got the same situation Michigan had last year, where you get to week 1 and you're going, man, this is just...
These guys ain't it.
Or I guess really week 3 where it's, okay, well, this is not working. We got to completely flip the script and then jump again and again and again.
For sure. And I think at the end of the day, for me,
barring an injury of some kind,
it just comes down to trust. And at the end of the day, from what I've seen with the Ohio State football program, the quarterback has never really been a true issue. It has been other parts of the team.
For sure.
The year with CJ Stroud, it was the defense. You've had different injuries here and there. Last season, even though they won out, the O-line was the biggest question mark week to week. And I trust Ryan Day because one of the specialties of Ryan Day is his experience in helping to kind of cultivate that quarterback position. That's what he used to do was a quarterback coach. He's been a quarterback.
That is where he is at his best. And I can say that's a Michigan guy. That is where he is at his best.
He is great at developing those guys.
I have many other questions about Ryan Day, but that is
well, they were answered last year.
Were they?
I think for me, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trust the program that's never really given me a reason to not. And so walking away from the spring game, I have Sayin as the number 1 QB on my board right now. Kienholz easily number 2. Yeah. St. Clair.
Anybody else, man? Yeah.
St. Clair, honestly,
but he ain't ready to go yet.
He's not ready to go yet, but I saw what I wanted to see out of him to be excited.
The good news is that you have a quarterback because this is the weird era of college football that we're in. And while we are intentionally focused on Ohio State, Michigan, we're not naive, and we'd be remiss not to talk about Nico Iamaleava and the Tennessee NIL holdout, whatever this is. This isn't really even the first iteration of this whole thing.
Do you think it was at the moment where Cody Simon busted his helmet open that he immediately was like, you know what? I should be getting paid a little bit. I should be getting paid.
I do not make nearly enough.
I don't make enough money for this crap. And
it was it Sluka from UNLV last year that kind of mid-season. Now that admittedly was at least the way that he presented it was there's some different stuff going on there. That wasn't a true negotiation. It was I'm saying I was promised this. I'm not getting it. UNLV saying no, you weren't. But that was almost, even though the details differ, Sluka at UNLV was kind of the first iteration of what you might call kind of this holdout mentality of, I'm not getting my valuation, or I'm not getting what I was promised, so I'm done with this. And I'm not passing judgment one way or the other on that particular situation, or even on Nico's situation. I'm just saying, like, we've known for years now that NIL is a brand new era. This is one of the more prominent watershed moments. I think Sluka was kind of the first crack in the dam, and then Nico is kind of the rest of the water kind of pouring through now. Just a weird situation for Josh Heupel in Tennessee, a weird situation for the NCAA. And I saw some Michigan beat folks even talking about, okay, like, let's be honest, like, Michigan just paid Bryce Underwood a ton of money. What do you do in that type? This was Mason Brew, so shout out to them. Like, what do you do in that type of situation to prevent that from happening? Like, this is the stuff that I know coaches like Ryan Day have talked about. Like, we've got to deal with this stuff now. And for Ohio State last year, for Michigan a couple years ago, hey, we're in the midst of a playoff run. We got to still deal with recruits, and the portal window's open. We're not going to tap into that. And how do we, Matt Rule, and we're not going to put our spring game footage on, on TV, or we're not going to have it at all. Michigan's having a tape delay. Like, this is just an entire wild west
changed
thing.
The game.
And as we've said ad nauseum, like, I hate it. I think you kind of hate it too. And I'm realizing, like, that I sound like old man yelling at clouds there, but like, I hate this, but also this is where we're at. We've got Michigan paying Bryce Underwood millions of dollars a year to come play football there. We've got Ohio State spending $20 million plus in NIL in the offseason last year.
I mean,
whether those, one player team, this was over 4 years. It is buku amounts of money being spent on college athletes. There's holdouts. They should be paid, but how much? If you have an answer to that, like, let us know. Like, we're not going to solve that here, but it's a very interesting. It feels like we've crossed the Rubicon now. Like the toothpaste is not going back in the tube on any of this. And now that you've got a primary quarterback, a clear QB1 for a team that made the playoff last year, essentially saying, I'm worth more, and the school saying no. It just makes a fascinating situation here.
Yeah, I think first off, the Ohio State comparison is a little bit off, because they spent $20 million, but it was to also bring in a lot of players that were already Buckeyes to just come back. So it's not like, I mean, sure, they brought in a Caleb Downs.
$21 million to build a roster that couldn't beat Michigan.
Building a roster implies that all 20 something million of that was spent on new players, when a good chunk of it was brought in to keep players from going to the draft.
I mean, you can skin a cat however many different ways you want.
I'll give you, they still went out and they got Judkins, Howard. They still
Caleb Downs,
Jeremiah Smith.
You kept guys from going to the NFL through that NIL deal as well. That's
different than going and getting players from another team. If those were guys that you were just retaining, it's slightly different. And
I'm saying that with Michigan, outspending LSU to get Bryce.
What was that? $10 million for one.
And again, it's
spread out over a couple of years.
But again, the point is that we're spending so much money.
Yeah.
And listen, we're not naive enough to think that, well, people weren't getting paid before now. Wasn't even Dan Lanning talking about, hey, now Kirby Smart can pay people in the open or something to that effect?
Yeah.
It's been happening in the SEC for years.
Yeah, and I'm sure not
just the SEC.
Even the Nico situation has probably been happening prior to this situation.
But this is the most prominent.
And I think it's in the way that it's happening, those probably happen off season before spring practice is around.
100%.
This happening like close to a spring game when you've been at practice, you've been doing stuff, and then now you're all of a sudden holding out. To me, and I actually love how this has been handled so far, because I'm with you. I think it's all gross. I hate it.
Yeah. But it's here. But it's where we are.
But I love the rest of the old men that are also stamping their feet into the ground and are like, okay, fine, then just don't play football. Like Heupel going out there and saying nobody's bigger than the team, and we've got guys that are just as good that we're gonna throw out there, and no other school. Like, I've seen the rumors of Oregon and Ohio State, and I forget the other school that Nico was being.
UCLA was a big one
and stuff. And I've seen a handful of people that are going online and saying, if I'm a college head coach, I'm not even considering this because I don't want that guy. And I agree. Somebody will, because the kid is talented.
100%.
Some lower level school. Now you're not going to see him at like a MAC, but like some smaller, and he can't even transfer to the SEC. So,
I didn't realize that.
I forget what the rule is, but there's some rule where he technically can't transfer to an SEC school. So you might see him go to like some in between school maybe this year to then go to a bigger school next year. Something along those lines, but you might see him go to like a Big 12 school or something like that. And
by the way, I don't think that's not necessarily a knock on Nico. Like we're not even necessarily parsing through the particulars of this issue.
Yeah.
It's more just recognizing how much money is being spent. And while I understand that this has happened for in some ways, aspects of this have happened for forever. The continued loss of amateurism, like it's not coming back. And that's where kind of, again, that old man yelling at clouds part of me is going, man, like, can we, the sports betting stuff is out of control. We've got 500 teams in the playoff now. Like the last regular season that, meant something in college sports. Now everybody's getting in. March Madness has 64 teams. Let's expand that as well.
Yeah.
Do you play basketball? You're in the tournament. Like, just there's part of me that just goes, man, and then the other part of me that goes, Bryce Underwood, man. And we'll talk about him next
I look
week.
at it and I go, you hate it until you're on the great receiving end of it. Where I'm looking at it, I'm
like,
like,
a national title.
Yeah.
Much and thanks to those players that you retained or brought in. I'll tell you what, though, maybe you feel a little bit like Josh Heupel in Tennessee. You're looking at your quarterback room and you're going, man, we need to transfer in some help. Elevated Integrity Construction can't help with that. But they are the portal to a successful project, whether a church, home, or business build. Aaron and his team, longtime supporters of the rivalry, longtime supporters of doing a job right the first time. Honesty and transparency every step of the way. Go with the folks with integrity in their name, elevatedintegrity.com. They have been longtime sponsors of this podcast, and we're really grateful for them. While we're on it, the Rivalry Podcast is also a proud member of the Varsity Network, powered by Learfield. Must have for everyone who calls themselves a college football fan. Live college football games, plus on-demand podcasts just like this one. Free to download in the App Store or Google Play Store. Search for your favorite school or for the Rivalry Podcast. And before we jump back to the Ohio State spring game, we also want to let people know across social media at RivalPod, great way to follow. Make sure you subscribe wherever you're listening now. Buy Me a Coffee is one of our favorite ways to have folks support. Shirts, stickers, shout outs waiting for you. You can click support at rivalpod.com. Our buddy Patrick jumped on board. Thank you, Patrick. Patrick said, just found the podcast. Love it already. Best, biggest, oldest rivalry in college football. No contest. Thanks for jumping in, Patrick. If you can't do the Buy Me a Coffee route with a monthly contribution, at least go get yourself a t-shirt. Michigan and Ohio State custom RivalPod designs. You can find them. Click support at rivalpod.com. One thing that I am curious about, and maybe you've already answered this as we've talked about quarterback depth chart, but I'm curious about, and by the way, I should say, for Michigan fans listening in going, why are you not talking about Michigan? Spring game next week. Okay, we'll be in Ann Arbor covering that.
We were going to do one giant one, and we just were excited to talk football, to be honest.
There's too much to try to cover both teams, and you lose, well, that game was a week ago. I don't remember what happened. We'll get to that. Okay, so if you're thinking, where's all the Michigan coverage? Trust me, this pains me as much as it pains you. But from the Ohio State perspective, coming out of spring game, position groups.
Yeah.
Position group that you are worried about, position group you feel very confident in.
Easy. I think it was blatantly obvious to anybody watching that game.
Tell me, because by the way, I've got answers for this too.
Yeah.
And not as an Ohio State fan, but as a Michigan fan looking at going, what concerns me in November and what doesn't?
Yeah,
at this point in April, which is insane. Go ahead.
Which is crazy. To me, the biggest problem is the defensive line depth.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily mind the starters out there. I think Caden Curry, Kenyatta Jackson, Edric Houston all have the talent to get it done. But the guys behind him, I have zero faith in right now. And those guys can't play the entire game. They're going to get tired. They're going to need rotated out. Yep. I'm not confident that the depth will really help. And if one of those guys gets down, has a minor tweak, anything like that, needs to miss a couple snaps, miss a couple games even, fingers crossed none of that happens.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit worried about their ability to get pressure. Now, granted, one of the strengths for Ohio State this year is the secondary. I do actually have a lot of confidence in them. I like the linebacking core that they have going on. The rest of the defense I feel is pretty solid, but it's that defensive line depth that I feel like when they're going to rotate those main guys out, I just don't have the faith that they're going to be able to get any pressure on the quarterback whatsoever. And when you got Texas coming in week 1, I'm worried about letting Arch Manning have that much time in the pocket.
Well, and I mean, this has been, maybe a bit barring last year, but like this has been where Michigan has frankly been bigger and better than Ohio State in years past. Has just been our offensive line can beat your defensive line. And that ground and pound style of Michigan football, particularly 21, 22, 23, where it was, you are going to be gassed by the time you get to the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. And you saw for all 3 of those years, you saw Michigan just go on these long drives late in the game that either ran the clock out or ran big chunks of clock out and kind of helped salt the game, even though the game was still going, okay, but it kind of helped salt the game away, right? Mm-hmm. Even in 23, Michigan ran like 8 minutes off the clock, and I told the story. I'm sitting up top, and I'm watching Sharon just kind of milk the clock and then run the ball, and I'm going, this fool is going to try and milk 8 minutes off this clock. I can't believe this. And sure enough, he milked 8 minutes off that clock and gave Ohio State limited time. But all that to say, that has been a struggle for Ohio State going against Michigan's or against a Texas type offensive line. That should be a concern at this stage.
It was going to be a glaring position of need anyways, because you lost literally every single one of your starters from last year, where you had these guys that were providing really good depth to those guys, but you no longer have a JT Tuimoloau. You don't have Tyleik Williams. You don't have a Jack Sawyer. And these guys were really good depth pieces that now are being stepped and put in bigger roles. And I think the guys that were in the number 2s last year have enough of what it takes to be number 1. The guys behind them concern me. Yeah. The stuff that I'm not really worried about, I mean, the blatant obvious answer for that's wide receiver. I think everybody knew going into this game, I'm not concerned with a trio of Brandon Ennis, Carnell Tate, or Jeremiah Smith. And now, I mean, it's not a surprise to Buckeye fans, and we'll talk about him later on. Mylan Graham, Max Clare being 2 major pieces that I expect to have huge roles in the offense. But then the other position group that I didn't feel like really just got enough love, the offensive line really impressed me in the spring game. I mean, a handful of the running backs just had massive holes all game long. Some of that might be because of the defensive line depth. But last year, even returning a lot of those guys that helped them on the national championship run. And if you've got a guy like Sayin, you've got these guys that it's going to be their first year starting under center. Having a reliable offensive line is maybe the biggest piece of this offense. So walking away, I mean, from an offensive side of things, the wide receiver position, the O-line, if I'm going to pick somebody out on the defensive side of the ball that really impressed me, I think the secondary is one of the best in the nation this year.
It's still going to be good.
Igbinosin, if he can learn to not hold jerseys as often, is going to be fine. You still have Jermaine Matthews, who played really, really well in the postseason last year. Still have Caleb Downs. They've got the pieces back there to still be really good, which does help if you're not able to get a ton of pressure.
For sure. I think all that's fair. I don't think that's terribly surprising. I'm glad you mentioned Max Clare, because I would say that's one of the pieces. If I'm trying to look at this for November, or trying to even just look at this as an objective college football fan, Max Clare does not get the love that he deserves as a tight end piece. And and again, at Michigan over the last several years, especially, and really beyond that. But I mean, you've got the guys like Jake Butt, but even more recently, where you've got guys like Colston Loveland, Luke Schoonmaker, right? Like you've got these guys that just play that position so well for Michigan, and what a threat that is when you've got a Colston Loveland out there, right? Now, and then you add to that guys that are really talented receivers like a Jeremiah Smith, right? Now it's one more body to have to cover. You've obviously got the blocking element of it. I mean, tight end I don't feel like Ohio State has had phenomenal tight ends of late.
They've never been good at utilizing them, because you had the Jeremy Ruckarts, you had the Cade Stovers. Even honestly, I would have thrown in G. Scott last year.
No one was scared of G. Scott.
He was athletic enough to make plays.
Maybe it is a utilization thing, but like none of those guys in and of themselves are like, oh boy, watch out. I know you're a big Stover guy.
How dare you?
Max Clare has the feel, if they use him right. Max Clare is one of those guys that could be like that. It has the feel of a, and you know, I don't want to make the comparison, but I guess I do. But it has the Colston Loveland feel, where you can roll this guy out and go, you better know where that man is, because if he's open, he's getting it. And so that's a huge weapon, because I've seen it firsthand for Michigan. That's a huge weapon to be able to have out there. So I think that's a position you can feel good about. I think one position group that you didn't mention that I am just, and it's so early, but I'll say at this point, I'm just not sold on is the running back room.
Really?
I think that Peoples is going to be a good back. I think James Peoples is going to be a good back. I don't think he's going to be a great back, at least not right now.
You think he's RB1?
No, and that's part of what concerns me if I'm trying to look at this as a Buckeye. Is CJ Donaldson does nothing for me.
Oh, I thought he had a phenomenal game.
He had a fine spring game. That's fine. But I think this is a step back for you.
Well, I mean, when you had Quinshon Judkins and
Travion and Quinshon, I mean, in the postseason were phenomenal. I thought that they were fine. They were good. They were good. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I thought they were good, not great in the regular season. I thought they were great in the postseason. Now, and I will grant you, some of that is going to be colored by their performance against Michigan, where there was just nothing. I just don't see CJ Donaldson being a step. I see this position group taking a step back, not a step forward. I guess that's kind of what the summary that I'm saying. This is not a better position group than last year. And I question whether or not Donaldson is actually going to be the guy. And probably a lot of that, I'll even caveat, a lot of that probably depends on how good your offensive line is.
Yeah, I think if the O-line stays healthy, the running back room doesn't concern me. I thought, even though I think Donaldson played pretty limited snaps, I think he had like 4 rushes for 35 yards or something like that during the spring game, but he had 2 explosive runs in that.
Yeah, I just don't.
I agree with you in the sense of it's going to be a step back. He is not to the level of a Trey or Quinshon.
No.
But is he good enough to get the job done? Yes. And then I look at it as an overall thing, which we're going to talk about it in the future when we talk about kind of the breakout guys. But I look at it from a depth perspective, and I'm looking at guys up and coming. Like you have Sam Williams-Dixon, you have guys like Bo Jackson that are going to be coming up. And I look at that and I go, okay, that position is in good hands.
I mean, there's future talent there, but you know, dare I say, like in the transfer portal NIL world, I mean, how many of those? And again, you could say that about any team at any position group, right? How many of those guys stick around? Like when I'm looking at the position group right now, it will be Donaldson and it will be Peoples, and I don't think that there's any question about.
Yeah, I would say that's 1 and 2.
That's the tandem, and that's probably in that order. I haven't seen, and maybe it's I haven't seen enough. Like I want to try and be objective here, especially because it's April. But transferring in from West Virginia, I mean, it's not Judkins transferring in from Ole Miss, right? Like it's not. Here's a guy. And now I said, and I'll give credit kind of on your end. I said the same thing about Will Howard. It's just a guy. And now also that was proven true, but it was enough to get it done. So I feel like CJ Donaldson right now is just a guy for me.
I think I'm not going to hype up CJ Donaldson like he's going to be this elite level running back. So I'm not going to defend him too much, but I do
feel like there's more potential there.
I feel like there's more potential. I feel like he could be a clean 1,000-yard guy. Now, do I think that he is? And honestly, I think for the Buckeyes to be successful,
he'll have to be.
I don't think he'll have to be. I realistically think you'll need 800 plus from him on the season. I think you'll need the bigger question to me is the quarterback position. I think if you can get 800 plus yards from Donaldson, another 250, 300 plus from Peoples in a split back, and then I think you can keep Sayin pretty clean. The dynamic weapons you have on that offense with Claire, Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis, Mylan Graham, Jeremiah Smith, the offensive line having the experience that it has, I just don't feel like you still need to be able to run the ball.
Yeah, because that's for a young quarterback, that opens up everything.
Yeah, so he still has to be effective, but I don't need him to be a home run hitter like a Quinshon or a Travion.
Yeah, and I get that. I think, yeah, I mean, I've said my piece. I think overall, my summary would be the position group at running back is taking a step back, not a step forward, and it's not even maintaining. And I think that's going to be the really curious thing about this Ohio State team as we kind of look at like, what are you looking at for fall ball here is I feel like for Ohio State, there's a lot of position groups. Let me put it this way. I don't see any position group taking a step forward. I see either a maintain or a step back. And again, you guys had a phenomenal team last year. Mm-hmm. Couldn't beat Michigan, but like you had a phenomenal team last year.
National championship season.
But I noticed you brought the trophy back here on YouTube. If you're not watching that Rival Pod on YouTube, but and I won't run through all of them. But quarterback is not taking a step forward. Running back's not taking a step forward. I'd say wide receiver room has maintained. Right. I don't think you are. I don't know that it's better than last year, but it's certainly not worse.
I would say if it took a step back, it would be
barely
somewhat small. It just depends. It depends. Carnell Tate was a huge piece. I think he'll perform better, but you lost Emeka Egbuka.
The team overall, and we said this back last year, the team overall is not a more talented team this year than it was last year. And so there is going to be some regression. You would assume Michigan, and it may not be this drastic, but we saw it with Michigan, right? We won't relive all that, but like we saw it with Michigan. You lose a butt ton of talent on your national championship team, and there's a lot that you got to kind of rebuild. You do, for better or for worse, maintain your head coach, and so like that does help pull the pieces together. There's other things we could talk about with Ryan Day. That's for a different podcast. What do you expect going into fall ball here? Basically, the question is, have you / we learned anything from this spring game?
I mean, you're always going to learn things. It's just whether you solidify that or not in your own mind. So, I mean, to me, I've solidified that Julian Sayin is going to be quarterback one. I don't see Keen Holtz. I don't see St. Clair beating him out for that. So, to me, that's going to be the guy you trot out. That's the guy you trot out against Texas. The thing that I just think Buckeyes need to understand, and it's not even me saying that it's going to happen, but it's just the way that college football is nowadays. This is a completely new crew for the most part. I forget what it was, but you're only returning a handful, like 2 starters on defense. It's Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs, and that's it. Everybody else.
Well, Igbenoson's back there.
Igbenoson's back.
So a small handful.
Two or three. On the offensive side, you're going to have some familiar faces, but at key positions, you're going to have new faces. It's going to be a bit of a learning curve. That Texas game might not be what you want it to be. And that's not me saying Ohio State's for sure going to lose.
No, there's no way to tell right now how to analyze that game.
Way too early. I think they'll still be competitive regardless, but I think it's one of those things where I want Buckeye fans to be prepared to not burn the house down if that were to occur week 1. This is the very first game a guy like Sayin or Keen Holtz or whoever they end up throwing out there is going to be playing. It's against a for sure playoff contender, maybe even title favorites.
Yeah. One of them for sure. It wouldn't surprise me, but my expectations for the fall, despite whatever happens week 1, I think this Buckeye team has the talent. I think they'll mature throughout the season to maybe drop just one game and still be able to beat a Michigan, still be able to beat a Penn State, even though I know last season I said Penn State might be my favorite to win the Natty. I think they're one of them again.
They're one of them
for sure.
And that's not going to be an easy game, but at least you get them at home. You got to go on the road at Wisconsin. I forget what other games really mark.
You've got at Washington, at Wisconsin, at Michigan. Penn State, Texas. Did you say? Okay.
I did.
Penn State, Texas. I mean, it's not a cakewalk. It's not the world's toughest schedule, but it's certainly not an easy one.
No, I think the Texas and Penn State are obviously the one people have circled outside of the Michigan game. Michigan's a no-brainer. That's always a toss-up. But I think if you drop the first game at Texas, it's going to put a little bit of urgency on your back to be like, we got to get this. You can't hit the panic button right away, but you do.
Maybe you can.
No, I mean, people will. People will. I know Buckeye Nation. We definitely will. The only way that I will be hitting that panic button is, if they go out and just
look lost.
It's like playing kindergartners, like if they get blown out and smoked to like 35-0 or worse. Sure. Then we can start to panic a little bit.
If it's Michigan's performance against Texas from last year, where it's like, you look like you aren't sure about anything, then maybe there's a little bit of panic
but
there.
I don't even know then, Because at least, what was the final score of that game? Like 34-17 or something?
I blocked a lot of that when it came out.
For it being the very first game, I would be sad for sure. I don't know if I would hit the panic button there.
It depends on how it how that plays.
I just think this team is going to be so last year, and you've seen this trend the past couple of seasons with national champions. You had Ohio State last year, who brought in a bunch of fifth-year guys, a bunch of seniors. You looked at Notre Dame on the opposite side, who they played against, did the exact same thing. You looked at Michigan the year prior.
Yep.
All their guys were returning fourth, fifth-year seniors that they were coming back. That's the new trend now, is you get these guys with experience behind you.
Yep.
And I'm looking at Texas. I'm looking at teams like Penn State. I'm going, these guys,
there's the experience.
They've been playing college ball for a while. And I'm looking at Ohio State trotting out a 6 foot on a good day, Julian Sayin, and it being his first start ever against this top tier competition. And I'm going, all right, let's see what you can do.
You know, dare I say, on the flip side, which I'd prefer not to think about, but like if you go out there and win, then you feel pretty good about moving forward.
And
too.
they very well could. I think right now Ohio State's 3-point favorites,
which is just, by the way, insane. How are we setting? And this is not necessarily a moral comment on sports stuff, but like, how are we setting lines already? I mean, this was like right after
football. And I'm here
right after the national title. It's like, hey, Ohio State's favored by 7.5 against Michigan. How? Guys aren't even on the team yet.
Only 7.5.
We're just looking at names and going, I don't know.
Give me the over.
Give me
the over.
The plan is to be in Ann Arbor this weekend so we can wash this taste of this particular podcast episode out of my mouth and actually talk about a team I care about. But we will be planning to be in Ann Arbor this weekend, so be sure to follow at Rival Pod, Instagram and Twitter. By the way, the game is a tape delay. So if you're looking for the game on Saturday, trying to watch from home, you will not find it. It's going to be the following Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
So no videos per Big Ten policy, but we will be able to come back, share some photos, talk about what happened. So you can kind of get almost an insider preview of what you can actually watch a week later. So stay tuned for that on the podcast. Be sure to subscribe at Rival Pod. And if you want to support like our buddy Patrick, just go to rivalpod.com and click on the support tab.
The Rivalry is a production of River Radio Ministries. Want live updates from the show? Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at RivalPod. To learn how to support the show, shop our merch, and read our blogs, visit rivalpod.com. Make sure to follow us wherever you're listening now. And if you like what you're hearing, tell a friend so they can listen too.